I think that this is also a really insightful thing, because I've heard people it's easy for people right now, especially when they criticize modernity and they want to associate themselves with that kind of criticism of the world we're living. It's very easy to generate clicks or to adopt a kind of behavior or rhetoric according to which everything modern is basically wrong and responsible for everything that is wrong with the world and has ever been wrong, like things like the extinction of the dinosaurs. Yeah, it's modernity that caused it. Well, it's technology that caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. Yeah,
the movement of time.
Yeah,
but no, the point I always try and make with this sort of thing is that quite often the argument will be that technology is making people incentivizing immorality, but if your environment can shape whether you're moral or not, then you're not moral. Being moral is being moral despite your circumstances. Otherwise, you're not moral.
I think that there is an interesting element of truth in the criticism, that because how we become habituated in our environment does contribute to the kind of person we become.
Of course.
So it seems to me that the world we live in does contribute to the people we are. But it is a significant mistake to point at something and say, this factor over here. Within this imperfect context, we have an imperfect factor. And this imperfect factor is actually blamed for everything bad. Okay? That's a mistake as well, because you could also say that the lack of that factor could bring you threats. So for instance, fire can burn us, but without fire we would be burned. And this is why, honestly, I get pissed off every time I hear about the myth of Prometheus and used in a pejorative sense. Oh, this is Promethean. Sorry, no. Of course, I'll try to use fire in order to make the world better and try to navigate myself in it. What else is there? Yeah, honestly, no. This is just complete nonsense for me. Just saying everything, okay, it's Promethean. Yeah, okay, without fire, you would freeze to death. So, learn how to use it. Technology is the same thing. Okay? It can be used for good, it can be used for bad. This applies to everything. You could say a kitchen knife. It can be good, it helps you in all sorts of ways. It can be used for bad. It's very easy, and I would say incredibly myopic, to pick something and try and present it as being the main source of trouble everywhere. Because that's the issue. If you present, it sort of resembles far left thinking. Let's find one thing and blame everything on it. Let's blame everything on technology.
This is one thing that really frustrates me, particularly my sort of research methodology brain, is that when you're learning to be a practicing research psychologist, like one of the very fundamental first things they tell you is, obviously human beings are very complicated things. If you think a phenomenon is caused by one factor, you're probably wrong. And that, things are normally multifactorial and very complicated, and the interchange between factors quite often can be mediated by other factors, and you get a sort of picture of the necessary complexity and resolution you need to see the world in to be able to understand it in the first place. Like simple psychological phenomenon that aren't even the conscious phenomenon, therefore a bit more fundamental because they're closer to human nature, still have very complicated webs of factors that contribute towards them. And so trying to understand a society and how it's motivated, well, that's, hundreds, thousands, even millions of human beings, all with their own individual multifactorial system running, if you're looking at them individual per individual basis. And then the sum total of all of that how on earth are you going to look at all of that data, all of that information, and say, you know what, I plucked out this one thing. This is what explains it.
Yeah.
Whenever you hear someone saying, this is caused by this and this alone, that person is stupid. That is 100% true all of the time. That's a joke, by the way, because I'm expressing massive certainty about the importance of uncertainty. So yeah, don't take that seriously. But there is still a point there to be had.
There is room for jokes, and this is something that gets lost in certain areas.
Yeah,
and it's
certainly
important to have them, yeah.
But my point being is that whenever something is reduced down to one factor, that I know Peterson has talked about this before, then the person's deliberately reduced that conversation to be so low resolution that it allows them to provide a convincing rhetorical device. And I think that that's ultimately what it is that person wants to convince the people they're speaking to that they know what they're talking about.
I think it is, ironically, an element of utopian thinking. Think of many people who grow old and they give the kind of advice to their offsprings, and their offspring, their children or grandchildren ask them, father, mother, grandparent, whatever, what should I do in life? And sometimes some of them are bitter and they think that if only I had that one thing, everything in my life would be perfect. So for instance, you have someone who's old and sometimes resentful and says, well, I didn't pursue my dream, so if I did it, everything else would be perfect. And I think that this kind of mentality is completely false, because we miss that the things that we said no to, sometime, if we said yes to them, a lot of other stuff in our lives would be different. Okay, for some people, that means that they should have made better choices. But I'm talking about the kind of person who just focuses on one issue and misses the forest for the trees. And this happens very frequently in context of values. There is a bias to think that there is only one and only one fundamental value, the one that is currently under threat. And this kind of thing, this kind of bias, unless we're aware of it, it leads us into extreme types of low resolution thinking. So for instance, right now, it's community that is at stake. So suddenly, a lot of people are forgetting all other values, like liberty. Forget it. It's demonology. It's demonic. Okay? Sorry, I'll have none of that. None of that.
Yeah, I think that because of the abstract nature of values and how, for many people, their manifestation of virtue and their values is in behaviour rather than consciously thought out and formalised, then they find it difficult to identify which virtues and principles they actually value until they're threatened, until their absence. It's like you don't know what you value until it's taken away. It's that sort of phrase, isn't it? And so I think it's a sort of defensive mindset. I don't think it's necessarily that helpful, although certainly some pushback on certain values is still important. There is a purpose to it. I think that also seeing the bigger picture and seeing which virtues you hold dear, things like, I don't know, truth might be under threat, and therefore it's very formalised in people's minds that it's valued, but some of the other ones might not be. Like, I think very few people are thinking, oh, it's a virtue to be materially satiated, like to have enough food and water. And I think that it's you've got to experience its absence to be able to appreciate its value. And it's a similar sort of thing in that you've got to either, hear second-hand accounts and really work on your understanding of something to know what it's like to have its absence and therefore for it to be valued. But I think this fundamental problem is because human beings assess themselves and their situation based on people who they see as their peers, people who they see as on their level, who may have achieved more or less than they have.
Yeah.
Which is why people are, despite there being material benefits all throughout human history, well, at least mostly throughout human history, people have always, their dissatisfaction with their current circumstances has always been ever present. So, you know, it's the classic example, and I find it a little bit boring, to be honest, but I'm going to say it anyway, of, you know, the average person today eats like the king of, I don't know, 1,000 years ago.
Yes.
And so it's not necessarily an objective value that gives people satisfaction. It's not, here's the set of criteria.
Well, sorry.
It's not, here's a set of criteria to make a human being happy, because it's referential to other human beings. It's constantly on the move.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.